Good day, everyone. My name is Daniel Chiu from the vXRail Technical Marketing team at Dell Technologies. Thank you for attending this vBrownBag session. I'm here to talk to you about how Dell EMC VxRail and vSAN ready nodes are unifying the VxRail HCI lifecycle management experience with VMware Lifecycle Manager, vLCM. In this session, I'll demonstrate the ease of creating baseline images and desired state images using the vLCM framework from both platforms. Built on our PowerEdge server platform, both are hyperconverged infrastructure products that are positioned to help our customers accelerate their IT modernization efforts. For VxRail, it's about the turnkey experience that really helps the customers offload their IT resources and decision-making responsibilities to the VxRail software. For every EXXI release, we deliver what we call a continuously validated state, which is a set of drivers and firmware versions for each component in the VxRail stack that's tested and validated against all VxRail configurations by our VxRail team. Think of it as a validated desired state in the vLCM terms. This is a level of operational simplicity that empowers customers to confidently evolve their clusters through hardware and software changes. VxRail's portfolio is built off of a subset of the PowerEdge server lineup, strategically picked to cover the large majority of use cases. However, there are customers that kind of have very specific workload types that require a PowerEdge server model that may not be in the VxRail portfolio. Dell EMC vSAN Ready Node supports a wider range of PowerEdge servers that can address the scenario. And for customers who already have deep IT expertise and invested in the personnel to handle infrastructure maintenance, Ready Nodes also offers them automation via vLCM while allowing them to retain more responsibility of what's running on their HCI stack. VMware vLCM uses a single cluster image to enforce integrity across all the clusters, all the hosts in the clusters. The cluster image requires a base image that's delivered by VMware, which is the EXXI image. The vLCM framework includes the flexibility for vendors like Dell to include the drivers and firmware into the cluster image. There are two types of add-ons: vendor add-on for individual components like NICs and fiber channel HBAs, and firmware and drivers add-on for server vendors to add their bits to the image. To use vLCM, you need to first establish a baseline image. And this is what I typically describe as the happy state. This is a state at which everything is working great, including your applications. The baseline image is used for compliance checks in case there is unplanned or planned drift. To perform a cluster update, you need to define the desired state image, the next happy state. From there, you can use vLCM and vCenter to perform drift detection against the baseline, then remediate that drift. Dell EMC vSAN Ready Nodes provide OpenManage Integration for VMware vCenter plugin, OMIVV, for the firmware and drivers add-on. And for VxRail, we just added compatibility with vLCM, where the VxRail manager accesses that plugin to vLCM. We've actually made a few LCM enhancements in the latest VxRail software release. First, Update Advisor is the planning tool that provides the customers a list of possible update paths for their cluster and the ability to view what changes are needed on their cluster to arrive at a particular target version. Second, Compliance Check. For those already using vLCM, is practically for the same purpose. Detect version drift from your baseline image. The baseline image for VxRail would be the continuously validated state running on the cluster. And thirdly is what probably has piqued your interest: vLCM compatibility. What does that mean? In short, we ported over the continuously validated states into the vLCM framework. The VxRail Manager plugin to vLCM manages populating baseline images and desired state images with continuously validated states. By using vLCM APIs, it's a transparent experience in that almost everything is done behind the scenes and it's within the VxRail LCM experience. All the VxRail LCM magic resides in VxRail Manager and the plugin to vLCM. So why are we doing this? Well, vLCM offers some unique benefits. It has integration with NXXT and vSphere Tanzu in that their VIBs can be part of the cluster image. The advantage in that those VIBs can be updated in the same boot cycle with the rest of the software, drivers, and firmware. Potentially some significant savings there. Providing this compatibility also positions VxRail to take advantage of future vLCM capabilities, because we do expect more to come. With all that said, this vLCM compatibility is optional for our customers. They can choose to enable it, or they can continue with their existing VxRail LCM process. They have the choice to enable it at a later time if they want. But here are the reasons why customers would want to enable it now. What I said earlier, consolidating VMware ecosystem updates can produce time savings. To customize VxRail cluster update, remember the vendor add-on option? We've added that capability for them to customize the image within the VxRail experience. vLCM introduced a pause and resume cluster update feature that will benefit customers with large clusters. They can split that update into multiple maintenance windows as needed. All right, let's get to the demonstration part. First, with how ready nodes establish the cluster baseline image. Through OMIVV, this customer-driven process is fairly straightforward. First, you need to deploy the OMIVV VM. Next, once the OMIVV is up and running, you'll need to register it with the vCenter server. Then configure from vCenter the host credentials profile for iDRAC and the host. Install the Dell Repository Manager, which is essentially the depot with all the firmware and drivers. And this can be installed locally within the network. Here you'll be defining the happy state. You need to have a list of the firmware and drivers running on the cluster. And this part will take some time to complete. Once that hardware profile is fully defined, you'll need to export the catalog onto an NFS or ZIP share that the vCenter server can see. From vCenter server, you need to build some profiles. One is a repository profile, which will point to the share with catalog. Then you create the cluster profile, which you will associate the repository profile to. This is your baseline image used for compliance checks. Now, how do you enable vLCM on VxRail? First, you need that baseline image. And with VxRail, it's super simple. Since your cluster is already running a continuously validated state, once your cluster is deployed, the identification process is already done. All those steps I just went over has been simplified to a single wizard that you run from VxRail Manager. The process of deploying the plugin, building the hardware profile, sharing the depot to vCenter, and defining the baseline image for vLCM are done behind the scenes so that it's not your responsibility to manage it. VxRail access the plugin, depot, and the orchestrator so that vLCM can just execute. And here's a recording using pre-release software to showcase that functionality. Here in the first part, you'll see a compliance check report, which essentially is giving you a report to show you whether your cluster is still in that continuously validated state. If it's not, it'll tell you which components are not. To enable vLCM, you just go to the Updates tab. Here you'll enter the root and admin credentials for vCenter in order for it to go ahead, for VxRail to go ahead and confirm whether it's in a continuously validated state. Once that is confirmed, VxRail will go ahead and insert that continuously validated state into the baseline image within that vLCM framework. And that's all that's needed. Now, to perform a cluster update, you need to define the desired state, the next happy state. For vSAN ready nodes, the experience is very similar to what you did to establish a baseline image, with a little bit more homework for you. Investigate the bill of materials to see whether it's an appropriate update for your cluster. Figure out which version you want to update to. Next, gathering drivers and firmware is the same exercise as before in going to the Dell Repository Manager. Testing and validating is a best practice for some companies to ensure optimal experience for applications running on the cluster. Once ready, create a new repository profile and a cluster profile. From vCenter, use that cluster profile to build your desired state image that includes the EXXI ISO image and the drivers and firmware. Lastly, run pre-checks and scans to make sure your cluster is ready, then kick off the remediation. There are many HCI users who want even more operational simplicity and certainty, that easy button, where all the work is done for them and they don't have to worry about it. And that's where VxRail comes in. All they have to do is select the next target version using the Update Advisor feature I had just talked about. Then VxRail via the vLCM APIs inserts that continuously validated state, package it in a single bundle to vCenter server to define that desired state image. The VxRail user can continue using VxRail Manager to initiate that scan and kick off that remediation. And that's it. So let me show you another demo using pre-release software from an engineering testbed to demonstrate that experience. Here you'll see the Update Advisor feature. It lists all the possible update paths that you can choose from. You select one, it will generate an advisory report. Essentially gives you basically a drift detection report of telling you what components need to be updated in order for you to arrive at that target version. Once you're comfortable with knowing once you get all the information that you need to schedule your maintenance window, then you can go ahead and do a pre-check. A pre-check is basically a cluster readiness check to let you know whether your cluster is ready for an update. If it's not ready, then it'll give you a list of things that needs to be rectified before you get into that maintenance window. So a very helpful planning tool. The next part is customizing your cluster image if you want. So when I talked about that vendor add-on option, this is the part where it's built into the VxRail experience, where you have the ability to add in the firmware and drivers for things like NICs or fiber channel HBA cards. That's not part of the continuously validated state, but you want to have it updated altogether. So here you can just add in the files and upload those locally. And once you have your customized cluster image, you are ready to go ahead and have VxRail insert that as a desired state image. And from that point on, the experience is very similar to what you have seen before with the VxRail LCM experience. You can schedule it to schedule the update for later, or just kick it off right now, enter the proper credentials to kick it off. Then you can then go ahead and monitor that progress. And that concludes the session. You've just seen how we establish baseline and desired state images for cluster updates with Dell EMC vSAN ready nodes and VxRail. For operational simplicity and certainty, VxRail's continuously validated states is what empowers our customers to confidently evolve their clusters through hardware and software changes. Even with the newly introduced vLCM compatibility, the VxRail advantage continues to differentiate itself behind the scenes with simple workflows to establish baseline and desired state images. Dell EMC vSAN ready nodes provide the operational flexibility for customers that want the LCM automation while also retaining more control of what they want running on their clusters. This concludes the session. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.